Hello, welcome to Talking in Stations, an EVE Online podcast. So today we have a bunch of news that we're going to cover that we've delayed since we were talking with CCP Security last week and getting an in-depth view of what the banning situation was for bots and the account stealing and all that kind of stuff. And it was fascinating. So if you haven't seen that show, go back and check it out. It's definitely worth it. And we'll give you an update on team security in just a minute. So today we're going to cover Burn Jita 5, which has just started this weekend as a surprise, and we'll get the latest on that. We're also going to talk a little bit about Lawn history with their CEO. And in addition, we're going to cover everything that we missed before, and that would be the February changes. We're going to review those, and then we're going to talk about the March changes and preview those. So sit down, have a cup of coffee, and let's go into some EVE Online for this week. All right, first I'd like to say hi to my pal Tiberius. How's it going, buddy?
Hey, buddy, I'm good. How are you doing? Hello, viewers. It's one of my. Well, it's becoming a rarer visit these days.
I know,
but
it's so sad.
it's always good to be on the show. So I'm glad to see everyone back. Tiberius Stargazer, NC Dice Corporation, also do a bit with event here as well.
That's right. And how are you doing, Carneros?
Very good, thank you. Good morning.
Morning. All right, we're waiting on a couple of guests to come back. Here's one now, but we will start with the CEO of Lawn, and that is Duncan Maclain.
Hey, good morning. How you guys doing today?
It's nice to have you here. And we have also Mawderator with us on screen.
Glad to be here.
Awesome. And Apple Pear, how are you?
I'm doing good. Shooting a lot of things this weekend, so that's always good.
Awesome. You'll bring us up to date on Burn Jita 5. And joining us in a couple of minutes will be Jay Amazingness. I'll signal him when he gets here. I think he had to run out for a capital kill. Poor guy. All right. Well, at least it'll be fresh news.
So in other words, get your caps hidden up if you got them out at the moment.
Yeah, no kidding. All right. The first thing I want to talk about is the security update that came out. So we had Team Security here talking about the importance of protecting your account. It was fascinating because you could see the measure of the problem when you have so many dead accounts that came back to life when EVE became more or less free to play, right? And that allowed all these accounts that were closed to be in a living state, which means they could be turned on without any payment. And that means that all these accounts were able to be hacked by people that didn't own them. And people go in and just take all the wealth out of that account, meaning the skill points that were accrued over the years, all the ISK and assets that were there, and just totally run off with them and sell them. And the reason that they could be hacked so easily is because most people keep the same password for all their internet stuff. So it created a huge problem. You could see that, and that show covers that. But they did kind of release some statistics. Carneros, do you want to look there and see who they zapped?
Yeah, I'd be happy to tell you. What period of time is this that we're looking at?
It's just February.
Just February. Holy cow. Okay.
Wow.
1,882 bans, of which 896 of the bans were for account hijacking. Thank God. 511 bans were for macros or botting, so input multiplexing or something like that. 253 bans were for RMT, which probably means they were selling, but might have mean they were buying on the black market. And there are 222 bans for other reasons by GMs, and that could be a number of things. They couldn't determine the ownership of the account in a dispute. It could have been, bad behavior. It could have been any number of things.
Yeah.
They didn't give us any explanation on those.
Actually, that was just something I threw in there because it was what was left. You had your total bans, and then you had your, the security bans, basically. And they made a point to say during the last show that they're in charge of only certain types of bans. So you can also be banned for behavioral problems and stuff like that. And that could be what those were.
Which is just the group right next to them where they're sitting. So it's not that, in your mind, don't picture it as that separate. They're right next to each other. They don't have separate offices. They're all just at desks next to each other.
Yeah.
And the bottings were a 3-day ban, and they're not allowed to. And starting in March, they're now ineligible for skill extraction permanently after that. Am I reading that right?
Yeah. So what that means is, Tiberius, do you know what that means? He's busy right now, but I'll just take it. It used to be that if you got banned for 3 days, it was just a warning shot, and they let you extract skill points. So what botters would do is they just extract all the skill points from that character they got banned and run off and start a new character and put all the skill points into that. And so they were botting with those characters so they could make up the difference in losses anyway. So it was really not effective. And what they decided to do was say, you know what, that warning shot of 3-day ban, you can't move your skill points over to some other account. And that should cause a lot more pressure on people not to do botting.
Behind the scenes, they have a few flags like that. They can do can't extract skills. They can do can't be sold on the bazaar. They can do can't vote in the CSM elections, a few things like that, because they have a few special class accounts that are given to a journalist, for example, or given to CCP staff. CCP staff who are on unpaid accounts do not have the ability to vote in the CSM election, whereas any paid accounts they have, they can vote with those.
Oh, it's interesting. You know, I used to have an Sony Online Entertainment press account.
Very nice. It's probably still there somewhere. You just,
yeah, I think so. I haven't tried it in a while, but yeah. Okay, so the other thing is they are considering revising their Section 18 of the Eula, which is basically the language that says you can't republish communication between you and a dev, and they're softening that a bit, it sounds like. I think a lot of people were concerned that it was that they couldn't even publish what they would talk to a dev in a benign way, when CCP only meant it to prevent the CCP devs from having to think about what they're saying every time they're talking to somebody. So
I think there was
used against them.
I think there was a pretty good example of that quite recently, where somebody filed a support ticket and put a little RP in there. They did a little bit of role playing about how great their catalyst was and things like that. And it died valiantly fighting whatever scourge it was at the time, and can it be reimbursed? And the dev replied back, RPing too, saying, unfortunately, it could not. And it was a really good response, and it got posted to Reddit. And the very first comment underneath it on Reddit was "in before ban." So, so I'm kind of glad they're doing that, because it allows people just to share some of the fun stuff that you just don't get to see anymore.
That kind of a ticket coming into customer service rep is actually a lot of fun for them. The ones that get that, now they get to have a little fun with that ticket, and it puts a little more energy back into the person before they go on to their next soul draining ticket.
Yeah, it must be such a thankless job, like just all these tickets coming in and having to go through them over and over and over and over again, and then having like one of the head GMs going, "Have you done your quota of tickets for the day?" and all this sort of stuff. So
Well, that's cool. Hopefully it lends some levity and better communication between the CCP and the players. And I think that's what the security team was trying to get across. They're going to be more open with things and less threatening and that sort of thing. Okay. So that's the update on the security. I want to point out that on INN, Matani wrote an article that was received quite well in most corners. Some people thought it really resonated with them, and it was called the EVE Online, The Masks of Cyber Purgatory. So check that article out if you haven't seen it. I co-created it with him, and that was a product of something that we're doing at INN called the Writers Workshop, where we get a couple of creative people together to work together and create an article. But yeah, he wrote that. He's pretty happy with it. I think the reception was pretty amazing. It's gotten way more traffic than usual and stuff like that. So check that out. Article by Matani, first time he's written in years.
So I think that was a pretty good article. I mean, it hits home for a lot of the EVE players that are out there. So I think everybody adopts a version of their persona in line, or online rather, in life. And I thought it was a really well done article, and I thought your artwork was spectacular.
Thank you. To put some TLDR on it, it's basically an exploration of role-playing and why Eve is so addictive, and why we're really like, we never walk away from it until we really walk away from it, and why we celebrate people that walk away and that sort of thing. So it's kind of like it's a bit of everything. Life cycle in Eve. It's about masks you wear, obviously. What kind of person you're pretending to be, and is that really you, or is that a mask you're putting on to pretend like something you can't do in real life? And so it explores all that stuff.
It's worth your time to read.
Yeah. Okay, so CSM rules changed, and Tiberius, what are they changing to?
No idea. I haven't read it.
I better stop calling on people in class, because Tiberius normally takes so much interest in CSM, but now he's taking interest in Stellaris, I think.
Yeah, sadly.
And
At least until after FanFest and some new stuff's come out for me to have a look at.
yeah, and so there we have basically applications open from March 19th to 23. That is a very short period. So applications that need to get in this very short period.
Oh wow,
then you have
that
a
is
long
short.
campaigning time.
Yeah, normally the application period's usually a few weeks.
Yep. And voting is condensed too.
Optimized for what's the easiest to manage for the team. So they've made it a short period of time. They've made the rules very strict for, you have to supply this information, and you have to have, a copy of your passport or a copy of your application for your passport, or you have to do a couple things very, very crisply and cleanly right at the beginning. And if you screw up, you're not going to get a mulligan for it. You're not going to get a do-over. They've been, in the past, they've bent over backwards for people.
Certainly, I do know in the past where people have maybe had issues with documentation, like visas or passports or things like that, and they've really struggled to get it through. A lot of the time, it's ended up on CCP devs just like chasing, well, have you got it in yet? Can we close the application? What's going on? And it's, now that you've got essentially Logibro's not there now, so it's CCP Guard, and that is basically the CSM rep now, I guess. The CCP
Falcon as well, but
Falcon as well.
It seems like they're doing this to kind of curtail people who aren't really putting in the effort, or who maybe don't have the documentation actually on hand. So it takes effort off of their back.
Also, they close the voting period, which I think is, most votes come in the first day, second day, or last day. So you might as well condense all that middle time down. Condensed sign-up period, condensed voting period, and in between that, a longer campaigning period. So you know who's official and stuff, which is good.
So they've turned Eve FanFest from the announcement of the new CSM into sort of an extended campaigning period, because you won't hear until afterwards. And actually, there was one more thing that I didn't see in the document that I was kind of watching for, and I think it's still in the rules. I think they just didn't put it in this document. It's just in some other rules, which is you cannot run for CSM if you are an employee of a competitive game company.
Oh yes, they put that one in.
The Scion rule.
Yeah,
that wasn't Scion. That was Keldum Ravon from Eve University, because he got elected, and then he took a job at SOE working on PlanetSide 2 while they were working on Dust 514, and they kind of took a deep breath at the point where they had to share Dust 514 information with them, and double checked the NDA agreements and said, okay, let's do this, but let's not do this anymore in the future.
Right.
But Keldum is a gentleman. If you know him, you know he's not going to tell a secret.
Yeah. Well, and so that's the CSM. So those rules have changed. And now we want to talk about Burn Jita, because that's the big news this weekend. All right, Apple Pear, what's going on with that?
We're killing all the freighters and orcas and jump freighters and other things that are in and around Jita. Bit of a history. It's before I started really playing the game, but this is the 5th Burn Jita. We have done Burn Amar and some other things in between, but this is the 5th Burn Jita, and it's a weekend long. At least we hope we can make it the weekend. A weekend long of 24/7 fleets that gank freighters all the time. so pretty no freighter, jump freighter, or anything in of near Jita is safe. It doesn't matter what kind of cargo you have, doesn't matter, etc. As long as you get bumped by us, you will get killed. That's pretty much what's the deal. And we started this Friday, 1400 Eve. We did the first gank, and we hope to end it Monday, but that's has to be seen how many ships we have, because we're running a bit low, so we might not hit Monday and have to end it tonight.
Well, having so much fun, you guys are going to pass out.
Yeah, that's. I think we have had like around 30 to 40,000 ships fitted up, and we're running low, so we have to see how it all goes. I hope it will go good, but at least we killed already a lot, 575 billion isk on freighters, jump freighters, and other things. We killed maybe a bit more, because not all the things, but there's a corp, suddenly seamen, a naval charity. I think you have a link for that. That has pretty much there. All the BJBs are in that. BJBs are burn Jita Vs, and that are alt characters of people who want to burn Jita. A lot of them, of course, use their mains or their ganking character they use normally, but it's a very nice thing. And you can see for March, when we started to burning Jita, what the value is. Last year we did February. You cannot see that on the last year. So last year we hit over 740 billion. And this year we already hit 575. So we have to see how it goes. We killed more things already this year than last year. So yeah, it's pretty. It's going pretty well. I don't know if any of you have participated in Burn Jita also.
I have. And by the way, even though a lot of the characters are called Burn Jita B, they're not all Goonswarm. In fact, they're not all Imperium. There'll be people mixed in there who are normally on the opposite side of a conflict from us. And they're putting on a temporary character and joining the fleet and running around. I've seen Kill a Bee, in fact, even streaming from the thing. I've seen folks from Tickle and a couple other normally not friendly groups in there with us.
Yeah, pretty much if you know how to get on comms and in the fleet, then you're invited. So you have to do the work and get on comms and be on fleet. And it's not the normal comms we have. We have a special comms for this. So if you have a way to find out how to get there, you're invited to run with us. So yeah, Killer B did yesterday a lot of ganking with us during his 24-hour stream he did, and a lot of other people just joining into the fun. Because it's just amazing. Like every 15 to 20 minutes on average, 20 minutes on average, we gank a freighter the whole day through, and it's a lot of work. I'm one of the reasons why I normally don't do that much in Minilove. I'm in Minilove, a member there, and just press F1 normally. But during Burn Jita, I'm always FCing. It's because we have a lot of people who do support. So we have people who have scouts who are scanning all kinds of things that are coming in, so we know what kind of fits it are. We have people who are bumping freighters. We have people who provide warp-ins. We have people who have aggressors, so they aggress. So if people log off, they don't disappear, and all kinds of other roles that are around this. Loot teams, all those kind of things are around this, are there. And normally those people also run fleets, but during Burn Jita, because of all the work that has been done, it's our general people who FC normally otherwise take that role. So myself, I think Asher done something. You have some other people like Mental 88 who doesn't do that much during the year, but for Burn Jita we are coming here and helping out the team.
So have the tools really helped Burn Jita? Because if you're going to fit that many ships, the bulk buy and all that kind of stuff must help a lot.
Oh, bulk buy and bulk fit. Thank you, Kaka. We love you.
Bulk fit for it mostly. Bulk buy not that much, I guess, because most of the things since we are being built ourselves. Since we mine a bit normally during the year and still now.
How long does it take? How long does it take to kind of prepare for this sort of thing?
What they started like a few months ago to start the plans, and we can run 3 or 4 Burn Jitas a year if we really want to. but it takes a lot for the people. Most of the time, after a weekend doing Burn Jita, people are burned out for ganking and other things for a few weeks to a month. So they're not only doing very high valuable stuff and not that much during that time. So, and you want to give people a chance to get their bread back and be in the thing, because it asks a lot of you people. This weekend, people plan, make sure they have no things planned. They're ganking 18 hours straight, etc. So it takes a lot from you. So that's why we're only doing it once a year in general.
And we want to keep it a special.
Yeah.
I also want to say a word about Mini Love, in case you guys don't know who that is. Some of the viewers or listeners might not know. The Imperium is so big that in order to have some sense of community, there are all these special interest groups for things that people enjoy together. And there's one for ganking called the Ministry of Love. And they call it Mini Love for short. And that's what he's referring to.
Yes.
So during Burn Jita, all these extra people everyone's invited to participate, so to speak. And all the Ministry of Love regulars end up stepping up into volunteer positions and doing a bunch of background work. And those of us who just joined for the Burn Jita get to just be passengers and have fun. And it may not sound like a lot of fun to shoot a freighter in high sec. It's remarkably more fun than it sounds. You should try it a couple times.
Yeah, and then you have things like anti-gankers who try to stop us. You have some ECM bursts. You have some people who killing our ships where we bump with, and all those kind of things come around, and we deal with that, and we find ways to deal with it, because we have done this before. So
they're good guys.
Yes,
that's just how you see it.
And there are also like bottom feeders that come and just try to do something cheap and tacky to get on lots of kill mails, and they're not trying to kill you. They're not trying to stop your gank. They don't want you to not do what you're doing. They just want cheap fluff on their kill board, and we all roll our eyes at that.
And people stealing our loot and those kind of things. And we're not that worried about loot most of the during budget. If we can get it, it's always a nice plus. But there are a lot of people who try to loot what we kill, because and then they can sell it again. So
let me just get Tiberius in here. Did you have something?
Yeah, I mean, because even though Burn Jita is like a huge content generator, like it's a big event, everybody likes to really get involved with it. It causes a lot of disruption. There is another reason behind it, isn't there? Like to do with sort of the markets and disrupting trade hubs and things like that, that a lot of people can profit from. Do you have any sort of idea or insight on how that sort of goes on as well?
There's probably going on because people in the Imperium, of course, know when it happens, so they can deal with that beforehand. I'm not too much into that. How much people are profiting from it? Yes or no?
Those are after effects. But we jumped right in because a lot of the players that watch the show are advanced players and stuff. But I'd like to dial back and go into the origins of Burn Jita. And to Carneros, can you tell us how it started?
There was ganking from way back. I'm a 2009 player. It predates me a lot.
Well, even before, sorry to interrupt you, even before Burn Jita, we need to describe like what it is. And this is basically a blockade of the busiest market hub in the game. There's basically one market hub that towers above them all. And that's where most people buy their stuff in bulk. And so this is a blockade by the Imperium, generally Goonswarm. To basically burn it means to not allow anything to get past it that has a lot of stuff in it, like freighters and industrials and stuff like that. So if you're moving cargo in and out of Jita, it's dangerous time. Sorry, go ahead.
You can go past it. I mean, it doesn't stop every ship. They just, every 20 minutes or so, they pick the best target out of the group and blow it up. So and it doesn't matter. And the best target doesn't necessarily mean the one with the lowest tank or the most value in its cargo hold or the most interesting name of the ship or it could be the one that's trying to go around and avoid us. That's the one we go for or something like that.
Do you guys scan them to see what's in them? Oh.
So we know what everything has got before it comes to us. I'll tell you a secret that I probably shouldn't say.
Please.
Now, the number one thing you can do to help your odds for getting through is to have a second character with a webbing ship to web your freighter into.
Oh, that's some advanced play.
Yeah.
So
is that okay to tell him, Apple Pear?
Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty known, and even then we might catch you. So, yeah.
So the way that this thing started was that this happened, I think, in 2011, I think, and that was that the CSM had a controversy with the Matani, and Matani was basically asked to either leave CSM or actually not to run again because their term had just ended. And so an immediate response to that, was probably planned before anyway, was this attack on the game, really. And it was goons kind of retaliating for their leader being dissed, something like that.
I remember that.
Yeah. And that was Burn Jita 1. It was put together by Aerith. He was a financial guy because it also helps the marketplace, which is what Tiberius was talking about earlier.
Although they don't pick when to do this based on market needs.
Oh, no.
They pick when to do this based on when does the group need content, and we haven't done this in a long time. Look, what can we do that would be fun for the players? And it's that kind of a thing.
So also one thing is that what was I'm saying? After the first Burn Jita is when the Ministry of Law started. So there was no special ganking sick within the Imperium before the first Burn Jita. After Burn Jita, there were so many people who liked to do it that they started in sick that did all the ganking, and from there the Ministry of Law started.
Right. So anyway, that was 2012, that's when Burn Jita first started. The CSM was 2011. It ended badly, and then by 2012 there was the Burn Jita, and we have a little bit of history inside the chat channel there. We'll get back to that. So yeah, so that was Burn Jita, and it went on for, as you know, they mostly did Jita, but they also did a different trade hub called Amar, which is the second largest trade hub, just to vary it up, I think. And
yeah, that was for a good reason, since the space pope, we needed to punish the people in Amar who didn't believe in the right ruler of Amar. So that's why Burn Amar started.
I love it. It's good.
So that excuse was for the people who followed the queen, the NPC queen,
Empress.
Sarum. Empress. Yeah. Sorry, Empress.
Sarum, heretic.
Yeah. Yeah, and so they made up this RP of a player called, they basically call him the Space Pope, and he basically was he was the leader that was, I guess, backed by the Imperium. So that was that kind of a conflict. It's a religious military conflict, but always goes back to the marketplace. So let's remember that this kind of shows you how many people aren't really playing the meta. So it's kind of like the people who just play the game don't know about this because it's all talked about out here in the meta, in news programs like this and that sort of stuff. But if you're in the game, there's no official notice that this place is going to be attacked.
Actually, we see these people who absolutely do know that Burn Jita is going on, and they still try to bring their stuff through. And we'll gank them once, and they'll go back and get another freighter. I don't understand that part.
And it's even that like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I think not Burnhamore, but the one before that it was in the client. So when they logged in, they got the message that Burn Jita was happening, and we still killed stuff. So even if you put it in the client and for everybody to read, people still get killed. So yeah, I don't mind.
There was a lot of complaints about it because this was seen as an attack on the rest of the game by Goonswarm, and so there was, I think they tried to say, hey, look, we'll give you a heads up, and the client going in, I think. So that was that. All right, cool. Is there a little bit more on this, or are we done?
Yeah, no, we have two fun things that I want to highlight. We have Michael Tyndall. There's a special Reddit thread about him. I don't know. I wasn't there exactly, but he was pretty salty about his loss, and then started putting tears into Jita, so people started a Reddit thread about him. That was a fun one. And one of the most fun ganks itself we had is an arc in Jita, and that kill we had over 370 people on that arc, and that was we had two gang fleets on at the same time, and it was a combined gang that we warped in at the same time with both fleets to kill one arc. And this was basically with the plates he had on there. This was max tanked what you could get. This is the hardest thing to kill as jump freighter with a ganging fleet there is. So this is something that you normally won't be able to kill, and we just combined 2 fleets on it and killed it all together, and that was like a great feeling to do that in Jita. So yeah, that were the 2 things I really want to do there. And for the rest, people, please bring in so many freighters, bring some like 20-30 billion worth freighters to Jita so we can kill them, and
It's like
you can participate in burn Jita that way.
It's like, please bring some water. Having so much fun. We haven't left. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Have fun doing Burn Jita. It ends when, so that I know when to move stuff.
Somewhere, I believe Monday somewhere. As I said, if we have enough ships, because that's a thing that is a bit of an issue. So we will see when it ends.
All right, cool. All right, congrats with that. Next, I want to turn to a topic that came up last week or 2 weeks ago when we talked about Blades of Grass and how they were quietly leaving the Guardians of the Galaxy's coalition led by Darkness, and they moved to I think it was DCU, which is drones. What is that? Drone control
unit.
Drone control unit, and that's they're up in like I guess the drone regions up in the north there. And while we were talking about them, their history came up because Blades of Grass is a play on the group called LAWN, LAWN, and it was formed by the people who started. Sorry, Blades of Grass was formed by the people who started LAWN, but were at some point LAWN had gone in a different direction than the leadership, and so the leadership broke off and did their own thing. When that was happening, there's a bit of a controversy, and that's why we wanted to talk to Duncan here. Duncan Maclain, who's the CEO of LAWN, to kind of explain what happened there.
Yeah, so that was a pretty interesting time for us. We were ironically, in Delve, where we are currently today. And, at the time I was the director of finance. And so, you're in Jabber all the time with, the various leadership positions, and you could definitely start to see a little bit of a split. There was, at the time, Basil Vulpine was leading LAWN, and there was more and more frustration with goons. And so there was a little bit of a difference of opinion. Now, what that was never really fully came out, but the frustration level continued to increase. So we retreated from Delve back and moved in a fountain with FA at the time. And, we handed our space off in Delve at the time through negotiated practice over to Sword Dragon. And everything went pretty well. We went to FA space with Fountain. And then when we retrenched back in the north and moved to Vale, there was a decision that was made where the Vulpines, Basil and Gang, wanted to go ahead and take LAWN, leave the Imperium at the time. I think we might have still been the CFC, and retrench and stay in Fountain Core and split off. And we were, pretty good sized, and so they really thought that everybody was going to stay within LAWN. We were going to go do our own thing and then leave. The problem was most of our corps were pretty tied to the relationships we had built with the Imperium, and we wanted to stay. And so it started a little bit of a schism. And I can still remember being in a hotel, and it was like 2 a.m, where the vice chairman, Thoric Frosthammer, gave me a call and said, secure everything, we're going to split. And so the corp started voting. We realigned the HC Corporation, and the next day, Blueprint House and a few other corporations had been exorcised from LAWN, and they were still blue, so they could evac. But at the time, the decision was made that we wanted to stay with the Imperium, but the leadership of the LAWN at the time wanted to go a different path, and so we split.
Wow. Now, Arendis corrects us here that the Vulpines weren't the founders of LAWN; they were the executors. Why is it confused that they were considered the leaders of, or the people who owned LAWN, basically?
So the actual founder, I believe, was Mindframe back in the day. So LAWN is an older alliance. It's 10 years plus. They started off with XIX before moving up into Pure Blind with NC. I joined LAWN about 8 years ago. And, at the time, the longest running chair that we've had, the reason why most people associate the Vulpines with Lawn is they were the longest running heads of Lawn, Basil was. And so while they have not always been the head of Lawn, they were the longing and most visible presence of Lawn for the last, few years until the change.
I see. So was there something of a robbery, like a 40 or 400 billion robbery that happened that they were blamed for and that sort of thing?
Yeah, that was a pretty big screw up on my part. So no. So at the time, Basil is a master at logistics. He's very good at it, and so he was holding Mungu, and there was a process internally where it's collected and then handed off to the finance department for development. And they were sitting on, I think, 22 or 25 billion. And I was putting the financials together, and I might have accidentally added a few zeros. And so when I was trying to settle everything up to make sure that all of our assets were secure, I mistakenly added a few zeros and screwed that up. I noticed it the next day, but by then the damage was done. So no, they never stole anything from Lawn. I see that all the time in Reddit. I try to correct it, and people tell me I'm wrong, which is pretty funny because I was the guy that made the mistake.
Yeah. No, that's great. I like the way you own up to it and stuff. I've heard that too. I didn't understand what had happened there. I thought it was like bad publicity of some sort or something. So was it a bitter departure or not?
It depends on your point of view. I know that the Vulpines felt pretty bitter. I underestimated probably the amount of people that were in Lawn and still are in Lawn that had significant frustration with them. I didn't share it. Everybody gets frustrated with people from time to time, but a lot of people were frustrated and looked at them as the opportunity. Some of it was Lawn has always been, kind of a drama-free, relatively mature alliance, but in a game where the average age of a player is 37, most people are older now, and but it was getting a little odd. If you said a bad word on comms, you were kind of taken to the shed and smacked around a little bit. There was more and more of kind of a moral police, and some people wanted to play the game and occasionally say a bad word or two, and so they pushed back, and while they left, and while I know everyone makes a joke about blades of grass, their values make them different. So Lawn today has values. I'm just not sure what exactly they are. But on the other hand, if CCP would love to give us another party suite, we would like a second opportunity.
It was about the party suite. This is legendary.
Yeah, I was there. Thankfully, I didn't sign for the room. So it was pretty crazy. I still think back to it. They were like, well, who's going? Who's got decent numbers? Lawn had pretty good numbers that year. And I think, well, if we're going to give somebody a party suite, who should we give it to? And I know it's random or what have you, but I'm pretty sure they thought we were a safe bet. And it might have started off safe. And then, we let a few people in. I mean, we even had, some police presence there, off-duty police officers from within Lawn that were kind of guarding the door, but it got out of control pretty quickly. And I ain't gonna lie, it was a pretty good time.
How bad was the damage?
I've heard various numbers. I've heard $12,000 to $15,000. I went back the next morning to see if I could help clean it up, and there were still people, sleeping in the tub, in the bed. It was kind of a little pandemonium a little bit. But I think the damage probably was a little overestimated, but Vegas has to get paid too, I guess. But it was pretty substantial. I looked at it and I was like, I don't think you can fix this. So we cleaned up what we could and got out.
That's a good thing CCP signed for the room, isn't it? Last time they did that.
Actually, I think it was the last time they had a party suite.
No, they had one for Mercenary Coalition, but I don't know how they controlled that.
Hopefully better.
Yeah. Well, okay. So those are two things about Lawn that stick out in my mind. We did talk to the Velopines, and if that's how you say their name, and they were reluctant to come on screen. They just are not good at it, he said. And but he kind of say everything you said, and it wasn't nearly. They're not really as angry about it as I thought they might be, because I thought it was a lot more contentious, but it doesn't sound like it. They're happy in Blades of Grass. They're happy they were in Guardians of the Galaxies, and they've moved on, and they're happy with where they're going. Just kind of a cheerful lot.
Yeah, they're very good people. You talk to people enough, and you get to know them pretty well. Very, very good people. And I think the other thing is, time has passed. They've moved on. We have moved on, but we're still kind of tied together at various points of time.
Cool. Well, thanks for clearing that up. I always wanted to know about that. All right, so let's shift gears here and move on to another group that's gone missing, and that is CO2. Are they making a comeback? Who knows about that?
I've heard this rumor also. It's great.
I mean, I've heard a number of different things, but I haven't heard anything like solid yet, other than they may be getting some space in the north, and somebody that knows GigX that was very involved in leadership to begin with in the first place is also running it. But I don't see a massive increase in .land numbers or activity, so I'm kind of interested to see what's happening there.
I don't think it's I don't think GigX is back. If he's back on an alt, maybe, I don't know, but I don't know. I'm pretty sure that GigX's ban has not been lifted. I'm pretty sure of that. And at this point, hold on. At this point, I want to introduce Jay Amazingness, because he has returned after killing something. How you doing, Jay?
Pretty good. I didn't kill anything, sadly, but
Boo.
bruised.
Don't come back till you kill something. All right, so Jay, thanks for joining us. Yeah, absolutely. We'll include you in this, and we're going to go later on into some of the changes that have come and gone and that are coming. But tell us about CO2. What do you know?
As far as I know, they're going to be living in Vale in a few systems where Infinity Space used to live. And GigX isn't unbanned, but he is planning on leading the alliance from Discord, I guess.
The grave.
Quinton Decker will be leading the alliance from in-game.
Oh, interesting.
I'm not sure how many people they're going to get to return, because if you were in CO2 before, that was like 5 months ago now. So you've settled in a new home. If you had a armor super, you probably switched to a shield one if you went to try or test. And do you really want to move all your supers and all your assets from the south to the north again, just to fly with a certain FC that can't log in?
It's a pain in the butt to move those things that far.
Yeah.
It'll test loyalties, won't it? No, like who was the hardcore guys?
Yeah, totally.
Apple, did you want to say something on this?
I wanted to make the same comment that I heard that GigX plan to lead the alliance from Discord, indeed. For the rest, I hope the judge has a lot of chainmail to protect his hands.
Chainmail? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. Not armor plates or something more significant? Never mind. All right, well... So another thing that's happened is the NETC, the New England Trade Company.
New Eden.
What did I call it? New Eve?
New England. You're thinking of like the old India Trading Company or something.
That's what it was. That's what I think of. Yeah, well, they were founded by the guy who basically put a lot of money into the casino war. It was Lenny Kravitz. But he got banned, and so his efforts kind of went away. Supported by other people. And so basically that ended up kind of languishing, and now it's basically gone.
Yeah, it was the sort of it was touted as the biggest public infrastructure that of Eve of all time, with all its keep stars designed to give people safe route for all their big ships and capitals all around LowSec. And there was a lot of money invested, huge amounts of money, because we're talking like multiple keep stars. Yeah,
early ones, right? Like these are the fresh off the front line. I mean, when they first came out, they were more expensive than they are now. And
yep. Yeah. And it wasn't only just that as well. It was getting all the Forzars in place too, but then it was also putting into place the contracts for all the various organizations to protect them as well. So they're like PO and NC, for example, was contracted to defend them should they come under attack and things like that. And then multiple organizations were involved in just looking after the things. Like Mercenary Coalition got one, for example. The Culture got another, I think. And it was going to be a huge, huge project, massive. And since the end of World War B, the casino wars, and the money, the massive wealth that was behind this thing was dried up, nothing's happened with it. And Tribber went on to Reddit and put an announcement out, which basically said that it's coming to an end with Ghost Legion, which is run by Fafa, part BOPE, PL, and NC interests, are going to be taking it over. So that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, the one of the Keep Stars was owned by MC, and they decided to give that to Max Singularity. What is it, Max Singularity? No, I'm totally wrong in his name.
Yeah, no, you're getting it right. They gave it to the Space Pope basically, and
yeah. Thanks. I'll just call him the Space Pope because I think Max Singularity, then I think of Max Headroom, then I think of Maximum Velocity, or that streamer guy. I just get it all mixed up. Anyway, so it has already kind of disassembled, but it's being picked up by Ghost Legion. We'll see what becomes of it. We're going to have a show on it April 1st. It won't be an April Fool's show either. It will be, we'll have Fafer from Ghost Legion telling us what's going on with that as Kriba steps out of it.
Yep.
And these things have changed in nature. It used to be that the idea was you had these Keep Stars that would have Titans, and the Titans would be able to bridge industrialists back and forth, and for a fee. They would be like gatekeepers. And that plan was just never going to work because of the way that people buy stuff in EVE or make stuff and that kind of thing. But they had this Fortizar map with Keep Stars that allowed these super capitals to use it as part of a highway to get to where they were going. The trouble is with these changes, that network is dead. Those Fortizars can no longer be safe for travelers in super capitals because they have now a tethering delay, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. And that means that it's not safe to go alone. And without that, those Fortizars really are kind of meaningless. But the Keep Stars are still important because those are like parking garages for supers. So if you're somebody who's not going to play the game for a while, you don't know if you're going to be in your alliance when you get back, you might park it in a neutral place. And this is one of those neutral places, these Keep Stars. So we'll see what happens with those.
And certainly while Tribber was, heading up the initiative, there was always that element of trust there that, these citadels won't be used for other purposes. Now with him stepping out of the picture and Ghost Legion coming into place, while Fafa promises to maintain neutrality of these facilities, there have been a lot of vocal concerns that he won't. So
how neutral will he be if I were to jump my supercap fleet to it?
Yeah, exactly. Because with his connections to other, like a whole bunch of groups in the north, if the Goon supercap fleet suddenly turns up on it, will that Keep Star stay neutral for very long? We don't know. So
that was kind of it's been BS ever since it came up. The way the Imperium views this network of Keep Stars, or actually Fortizars and Keep Stars at the time, was as a threat, because now you have a highway for PL and NC who are mostly don't care about SOV, they care about war. They could use that to get down to Delve. So any way that this trade company got near, anywhere it got near the Imperium would destroy it, and including Keep Star.
We tried to, anytime they've tried to put one down within, like, say, 2 or 3 midpoints of Delve, we've fought back and we've won. The one in Solitude, the Keep Star that was planned for there, I'm not sure if it's up yet or if it ever went up, but that's the one that we were planning on shooting as well. But we don't want anything near Delve from those 3 ports.
Yeah, the PL one we killed.
Is it also it doesn't. It also affects our members as well. It's a lot easier for our members to move their super caps out of Delve and sell them, which is against our policy.
Oh, interesting. So in order to keep them from using third party facilities to sneakily sell Titans and I was going to say motherships, but super carriers to people they're not supposed to be. So you kind of shut your own guys off from that market too. That's interesting.
Yeah, stop the nuclear weapon proliferation outside of your own country.
Yeah, but the network itself said, okay, well, Imperium can't really use this network because they killed the Keepstar we were trying to put up in what was in the south there? It's not Decline. What's in the south?
Janaleb.
I
Isn't Janaleb and Derelict?
Derelict. Thank you. Yes, you're right about that. And so by killing that Keepstar, they disqualified themselves from using these. But really, that was like, you can't use these to stage invasion on North, so we'll just say Imperium can't use it. I'm sure if there was...
We got a 30-day ban from using them for that Janaleb Keepstar kill.
Oh, is that right? Well, I
Yeah.
think you're still on the unwelcome list. So I think Ghost Legion has their work cut out for them. They have to basically show everybody that they are neutral and just make policies that reflect neutrality and trustworthiness. And we'll see how that goes forward.
And the last Keepstar is of the network that's going to be transferred over, which is a Noonan, is scheduled to be transferred over at the end of this month.
Yeah. All right, cool. Again, we'll get an update on April 1st after that transition happens, what the future looks like for that network. It will no longer be New Eden's trade company. It will be something completely different. Okay, now for the stuff that we really wanted to cover, and we have the FCs here, like Mawderator and Amazingness and Apple Pear. We want to talk about some of the changes that came through in February. I'll read them off real quick. There was Upwell Structures 2.0, Guardians Gala, which was an event, and that's over now. And there was an Assault Frigate Balance, which we'll talk about. And then there was some, what they're called Eros Blossoms, and Eros being Cupid because this was around February. Okay, so a couple things. Assault Frigate Balance. Mawderator, you were writing something about this for your blog, is that right?
I'm in the process of, it's more on the actual hack side of it, but assault frigates kind of generally fall under that umbrella as sort of a footnote because they are under that kind of designation as being an assault ship. More or less what happened to those is that, as shown in the patch notes, they got some capacitor and some other stats buffed. A couple of them had fitting buffed, and generally they were in a place prior to that where they weren't particularly competitive, and now they're much more so.
So go ahead, guys. Tell me what you guys think of that stuff. Do you like the changes?
I'm personally generally in favor of the changes. I think it was healthy, and they needed to have a role. I don't think they're particularly oppressive. There's a couple of situations where you can use the assault damage control, especially in a smaller scale 1v1 kind of frigate engagements where they can be really strong. I mean, no one wants to take on, a Jaguar or, say, a Harpy that can just melt you in the face. But
that's a new take on shoot you in the face. So we should say that Mawderator was team captain for the Alliance tournament. He's a master of theory crafting, a writer as well, as you know. And somebody that people look to see like what, how the meta is changing for ship doctrines. And for those of you that are really a novice, ship doctrines are the way that you put a ship together in order to fly it. And the doctrine part is how you fly it as well as how you put it together. And this is basically theory crafting for how to play Eve as a game, as a video game, basically, where you fight people and all that kind of stuff. All right, so those were the changes in February. Does somebody else want to hit Upwell Structure Changes 2.0? There's a saturation of information out there, lots of other podcasts and writers talking about it. So I don't feel like we really need to tread over it very much. Just want to say that those changes came in, and have we seen what the results of those changes were?
A lot more citadels are dying.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
like yeah, when the changes came out, within sort of a few days of it, CCP Quant tweeted out a graph showing the number of citadels that have been reinforced over the period of day, and it literally was just this wobbly line and then straight up, as everybody was taking on high-sec citadels that were all over the place and clearing up citadels in their own space in null-sec and low-sec. So very interesting.
In particular, there were a lot of low-power citadels that people saw the opportunity to kill since they were weak immediately, since they were unfueled at the time. And, if you put a fairly low amount of effort into actually breaking them, you can get whatever salvage or loot when they finally did die. So
one thing I've seen people do to make money, and if you have a few friends, the low skilled and poor, go into a wormhole with a few Vex and AV issues and just look for low powered Astra houses.
In wormholes, you said?
Yep.
It takes like 2 days to kill them, 3 days to kill them, and the loot you can get like 60, 70 bill out of some of these.
Yeah, because wormholes don't have asset safety, so when you blow them up, they drop everything.
Yep.
And that's one thing I think we weren't prepared for. Cascora talked about this a couple weeks ago on the show when this was just starting out. Again, this is February changes that are already in the game. And she said when her and her group heard about these changes coming at Vegas, they were excited about how many pinatas there would be to kill. But we never really picked up on that. And then all of a sudden this change happens and we're hearing that there's so many things getting killed in wormhole space. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, because beforehand, like trying to siege a citadel in wormhole space was extraordinarily difficult because it required so much time and so much effort with all the reinforcements. You put guys into the wormhole to reinforce the citadel, you're there for a whole week and a bit. Like, there was no way around that. You had to be there for a whole week. I think the timers are different, though, in wormholes, aren't they?
Yeah, it's like 1 day and then 2 days and then 3 days. It's not over a week. But most people that aren't playing the game, if you haven't set your Voln timer, essentially, or when you want it to come out, it will default to Saturday at 1800. So you can go into wormholes on like Friday with a few friends, and then it'll come out the next day, and you kill Citadel.
Right. So those changes made Citadels a little easier to kill, a little faster, but they also gave there was some trade-offs, and so they got a little bit of a buff too. Again, these are changes that are in the game now. And the Guardians Gala event is actually already over, so I hope you participated in that if you knew that was coming. Anybody have an Eros Blossom skin, by the way? They're basically purple pink.
Yeah, I've got on my Thanatos and my Macarion.
Okay.
I have the pink skin for my Rockall that was already there for a year.
Well, we'll talk about some of that later on if we get a chance. I want to rant about pink skins and missing Torfy and stuff like that. Okay, so now on to March changes. These changes are not in yet. They will be in probably mid-March. We're thinking the Ides of March if it's the right Tuesday, which would be the 15th of March. But we don't know the actual date on when they come in. But what's headed our way? Do you guys want to go through that list with me?
I think like the one thing that everyone's probably most aware of is the fairly major change that's being made to the reduction in overall jump fatigue, as well as the changes to the jumping and tethering mechanics.
Right. So there's a 95% reduction there, which would essentially bring your max fatigue to 5 hours.
Oh, thank God.
5 hours.
Time.
I mean, it used to be 30 days when it first came out. But also your inability to jump would be reduced to 30 minutes. So those are the two changes. That's, to me, seems drastic, but only on paper does it seem drastic. The real world considerations, I don't know what that means, because when you're moving a fleet,
I mean, essentially, it means that if you log in for an evening and jump your capital ship around for an evening and then log off for the night, when you come back again, you can do it again the following evening and do it again the following evening. Whereas now you jack up too much fatigue and you're kind of restricted to doing anything for a max time for a week. So, this allows people to come on and use their capital ships on a daily basis, rather than just like a big time once a week and then having to wait a whole week to clear it again.
Well, my question is, these seem to be, as far as CCP is concerned, enough to stop people from projecting their super capital power too far, which was what the whole point of it was. And if this is all they needed to do that, why did they go with a month of jet lag, basically, where you had to sit down and not use that character, not just in a Titan, but anywhere else?
Directly to this, do you really think people would have changed their behavior that much? Or would they have still just said, okay, it's going to be harder to project, but let's still project?
when they first introduced it, there were still nomadic groups. So you still had like PLNC with no home, just roaming around with massive supercat fleets. Now they've settled down and they have a home. They have assets to protect. That's why I think they've changed it now. I don't think you'll see big supercat fleets roaming around like you used to. Like you'd see like 10 mid-sinos go up and you'd move from Tenor to Delve in 12 minutes. That won't happen anymore. But
no more battle Lascars and stuff like that.
Yeah, you will still see people protecting their own space, but going 1 or 2 mids further now. So there's more in that sphere of influence.
It certainly benefits the people that do like 2 or 3 jumps in quick succession around their area. But the further you go, you're still going to have to take a long time to get further away. So with the jump ranges, if you're needing to do 12 jumps, we're at max time. That's still going to take you sort of 6 hours to do. So, I think it's a good trade-off.
I think maybe they wanted. Go ahead, Apple.
Yeah, and one thing that I think this makes a lot of people are like complaining that there is not that much to fight near them, but with these changes, it makes even bits smaller, because it's before then you would, if you take a fleet out, you would take 1 bridge. If you take 2 bridges, you have 5 hours of fatigue, and then you have to wait, and that makes it harder for people to play the game. And now it's pretty easy to do 2 bridges, so you bridge a few jumps and you bridge again. So it makes your way to travel towards something to shoot, something to kill, and to have fun makes it a lot less. And the irritating part of traveling goes away a bit. So I think it's a very good change. It's a nice in between from not making it too oppressive, but making it for people who want to play the game and want to shoot something and go somewhere, make it a bit easier.
The opposite to that is, I was talking to Capku and Killer B on his stream, and Capku said he's fighting DCU in the drone lands. So these are people that don't have much in the way of super caps. So they're forming up these battleship fleets, and they're moving. 2 bridges for them essentially means they have to pick between timers. So if there's a timer at 1600 EVE and a timer at 2100 EVE, they can only double bridge to one of them. Otherwise, their pilots get too much fatigue, and this will make it so they can double bridge to both of them. So it reduces the amount of fights you'll be able to take because they're not gating around, and there's no opportunities for dropping on them whilst they're gating around.
Well, I think one of the things to consider always is the context of when these changes happened. It wasn't only the power projection I think they were after at the time, because remember, when they first announced these things, the jump freighter would have the same fatigue as anybody else. So you could only carry supplies so far. The jump freighter had a jump range of 5 light years, the same as the Titan, the same as the carrier. Like all the jump distances were 5 light years if you had max skills. And all the fatigue was the same for everybody else. And then people got really mad. And so what they did is they dialed back. They said, okay, well, we'll exclude logistics, because I think what they were trying to do is say, live locally. In other words, fight locally, live locally. And they were trying to make you create your own societies in outlaw space rather than having that umbilical cord to Jita where you could just move supplies back and forth at a cheap cost. But they really kind of backed off on that. And so this seems to be remnants of, this needs to be the last nerf to their nerf that they put in, where you could basically get yourself into a bad situation of not being able to jump with that character on a capital or super capital or whatever, or blops. If you jump 3 or 4 different times, you couldn't get on him for a few days. So I think it's kind of like, and that to me is a sad sign, because it means like, even though Delve has created its own society, they have their own marketplace, and they have their own, police and that sort of thing. That's not really taking off in other places. Even though that's happening, though, it feels like the game is a bit smaller for it, because they're basically saying people need to be able to get the content across the galaxy, and that's what people are squawking about. So they're going to give it to them. They're going to give them the ability to increase their range, so they can play with these big toys that they spend a lot of time investing in. Is that too pessimistic of you guys?
I don't necessarily know if it's too pessimistic, but one thing I'm a little bit concerned on is that CCP, when they've been balancing cap fatigue or not, they seem to go from kind of one extreme to another. So originally, there was no fatigue. Capitals could jump up to, I want to say, 13 light years.
14.2.
I don't remember the exact number, but it was in that neighborhood. And that was definitely far too extreme. I was in Pandemic Legion at the time during the Halloween War, and we would frequently be able to travel from essentially one side of the galaxy to another in a matter of 10 to 15 minutes. Then when they went to full fatigue, which made it so you could do nearly nothing, and then they extended the jump ranges a bit. I don't know if they needed to bring it down so low to 5 hours on the blue timer and 30 on the red. I'm a little bit concerned that, especially in fights with large amount of tie-dye, that people who are wanting to come to that fight can do so much quicker, and that it allows for too much local projection. I'd maybe like to see a blue timer of about a day at most, and maybe a red timer of about an hour or so. But I don't think I think where they're going is generally the right direction. I don't know if they needed to make it 95% reduction, though.
Yeah, it's like a I don't know, a jump clone takes a little less than a day if you have all the skills trained up.
And a little less than a day is optimal, to be fair, because you don't want to stop people from playing their game time in the evening. So jump clone timers were changed to a little bit less than a day, so you can jump, and then when you log back in, you can jump back again, and all this sort of jazz. So I think jump timers should follow the same suit. So whether 5 hours is too extreme, maybe. We'll certainly see, though, that's for sure.
Right. So if you could only play at 6 o'clock in the evenings, you don't want to be sealed out until 7 o'clock, then 8 o'clock, then 9 o'clock. So
yeah, exactly. And I think this is probably a lot of the reason behind that decision, that 5 hours, because it means you get a whole evening's worth of gameplay in, and then when you log in the next day, you're good again.
So anybody else got anything on jump fatigue? We can cover all these things all at once, so we can go back and forth on this stuff.
I'd rather have more range and less penalty for that range than reduce jump fatigue.
Oh, interesting. Right. So you would have preferred to go further on.
Yeah, I'd rather have like 10 light years and super caps or carriers than the 7. But the 7 that we have right now gives you an hour and 20 minutes of fatigue. I'd rather that be reduced a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, that would get you into more action quicker, which would be good for you guys, or give you you could actually grow your empire, because then your defense fleet could travel a bit further if it needed to and not be penalized. Well,
also means the gankers can jump further into our space.
Yeah, that's true. The tethering is another change, and this is the thing that killed NETC, because if you jump to a Fortizar with a super capital, you cannot dock because they don't fit. And that means that you don't get tethering help either. So if somebody's sitting there stalking that, you're vulnerable for at least 30 seconds. That hasn't been determined yet, but it's at least 30 seconds. Makes it dangerous for lone travelers of super carriers and stuff like that. So Fortizars are going to feel that. And so this change is basically that if you jump to a Fortizar, if you jump to a citadel, any citadel of any size, that you right now automatically tether up and are safe. And so it becomes a very safe way to travel. But now you will have a 30-second delay, which means that if you cannot dock because your ship is too big, you're in a little bit of trouble. What do we think of that?
I know I'm going to have more squeaky bum times when I'm jumping a super around, that's for sure.
Definitely a good change, because it means that there'll be no more people moving around with impunity.
Yeah, and that's exactly what the rule was made for. They want a little more risk. There was too much safety involved in moving large assets and stuff. So
don't get me wrong; it will still be very easy to move super caps around if you are smart about it. It's that if you just jump blindly without thinking about it, then you'll get punished.
Because there was a whole cottage industry of EVE players that would hunt traveling supers, Wrecking Crew, Low Sechnia, Sloop, and was it? Yeah, it's Low Sechnia. A whole bunch of others as well would spend their entire time tracking super capitals as they move around. With the change of Citadels, it kind of, I mean, it still happens, but it's a lot harder for them to do their what they want to do, is just hunting capital ships. And this change, if you're not clever about it, like you said, you're going to get caught out.
They call those whalers, right? No, those are the guys that hit the big jump freighters or whatever.
It's actually
They're the ones that hit the miners, because it's the Orca and
right.
the Rorqual.
It's actually kind of funny that they're doing this, because if you remember, prior to the existence of Citadels, there was an exploit called the Garage Door Sino, where if you were on a POS and the POS didn't have its shield online, you could light the Sino on the POS stick, jump your asset to that POS, and then online the shield. So you were essentially perfectly safe. And then when CCP introduced... and then CCP actually said, no, you can't do this. This is an exploit. But when Citadels came out, you could jump to them in essentially the same way, where you were instantly tethered and instantly safe upon the jump. So it's interesting to see them go back to that.
I'd rather have it this way than some of the other suggestions, though, because some of the other suggestions are like, you won't be able to light a Sino on a Citadel at 0. You need to be at least 5k off or whatever. That doesn't seem... That just seems like more risk than is needed, because then there's no coming back from that. But this, there is still hope that you can be safe somewhat.
Right. Yeah.
And it still gives the same thing that you had before with like jump freighters and those kind of things, those ships, that you lighted the Sino on the station and then docked up. And you still can do that as long as you can dock in the Citadel. You can dock directly after you go in there. So if you jump a carrier to a fortress, or you can dock and you're completely safe. But if you cannot dock in this structure, then you get that timer and have a bit of risk to it. So that's good in my opinion.
Now, what about these sovereignty changes?
Those are good.
Yeah.
Remote assistance for Entosisers. Yes.
Explain that.
So they're allowing. So say you're Entosising in a ship. Firstly, you'll have the range reduced, so you won't have 250 kilometer range at the minute on your T2 Entosis link. You'll have 50, and you will also be able to receive remote assistance. So that means logi reps and like remote sensor boosters and whatnot. If you want that, but you also get 100% sensor strength, meaning it's harder to be jammed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, essentially, these changes where an Entosiser is very difficult to jam, and they're going to be able to get remote assistance, destroys the biggest problems that currently with Entosis warfare, which is essentially fuzzy claws, where you just get as many intercepts as you possibly could with artillery, completely nullified, land, blap the thing that was Entosising, and they couldn't do anything about it, warp off, or you just bring in a whole bunch of jamming ships, jam it, and then warp off. And the counter to that ended up being putting a rapier or something like that with a T2 Entosis link, and then jumping in a fax, a local rep fax, and using that to finish off the Entosis link. And it just ended up being that rather than fighting on these nodes, which is what the original intention of these Entosis links were, is that you go and people fight around to control these nodes. You just have people do hit and run attacks, or just put the biggest, most difficult thing to kill on there instead. And in the end, it just wasn't very fulfilling gameplay for anybody.
Right. So there's going to be more risk for your ship because you're going to have to be closer to the node, but there'll be more assistance available to you if you're the one doing the Entosising is what I'm getting out of these changes.
Hopefully we'll have fleet fights over where the objective is killing these like 10 hackers on one node instead of, everyone running around and interceptors.
Right. That was supposed to be a big component of it, right? Because you could have, it was supposed to be a tug of war where you had five guys against their 5 guys, and that just never happened.
Yeah.
These are the best changes we've had to solve since, well, this iteration of stuff. I much prefer the old Dominion style solve, but
yeah, I know people look back at the old days, forget the pain, right? But
I enjoyed the pain.
yeah, some people.
It was fun.
One thing that's also makes it better for us is that the score you gain goes from 5 to 7%, and also the amount of notes that come out are less. So pretty much you need less notes to win a timer from both sides. So it makes it also a bit less painful to do the timers.
Yeah, because it was incredibly grindy with all those timers. And if you had a real contest for the timers, like, people were really to and throwing, you could end up fighting for these timers for hours and hours. We're talking like...
Apple, do you remember during World War B, we did the EC Tag iHub, which took 7 hours?
I remember that one very well.
Right. So
I think, even during in Tribute as well, when NC, Horde, and that PL were fighting CO2, I think there was one node that we were fighting over for like 11 hours. There was like rotations of people in and out of fleet just to keep going for this thing.
Wow.
It's too much.
Right. So, okay. So, be less nodes and you'll be able to take them quicker. So, Sov might become a little more contestable and that sort of thing. Okay. So, this new thing came out that they're going to rotate skins. I guess they're running out of inventory space on the interface and they want to retire skins, which is a fascinating concept, right? Scarcity. Something that people talk about.
I can chime in on this one a little bit. For those of you who don't know, in my daily life, I'm a producer on a video game for another company, and have spent a lot of time on monetization in stores. I built the original NEX store in EVE Online as an experiment to learn more about selling, items in stores. You don't want too much in your store. That actually doesn't improve. It's really, really hard to find what you want in a store that has a lot of stuff in it. The brilliance that is Amazon.com is not how much crap they have shoved into their store. It's how remarkably easy it is for you to find something to buy in all that pile. They've built brilliant software to help you find things that you might like that's related, or put stuff together that's really hard to do. In a video game, if you stop for a second and look at Blizzard, who is in some ways a thought leader in some of this stuff. Go look at their stores. There are very few items for sale for each of their games, just a handful, and you can see them visually all pretty well in the store. There's not page after page of them. No, not like that. Best practices in this says, and mind you, my games aren't any better, so I got too much crap in there, and I constantly go through and try to pull stuff out and archive them.
Your game is EverQuest, right?
EverQuest 2, and although I'm mostly focusing on an as yet unnamed, unannounced title.
Ooh.
But you got to do something. A man has to put food on the table. That's the rules. So we're working on stuff, but they've got too much in their store. I agree. They need to remove some stuff out of it, and following the Disney model of vaulting some things, putting it away for a few years, bring it back later, for a special occasion, for a vault sale on a weekend, for example. That's a good way to do it. They've more or less put a disclaimer on the announcement page where they're taking things out, basically spelling out that they're going to vault them and can reserve the right to bring it back for brief opportunities in the future.
Invest in skin.
Yeah, we've seen as well in past events where they've had skin drops. They've reused the old skin drops, the old skins as well, like the old two-tone ones that they had before they started releasing the latest set. So they can use them for those as well, rather than having to have a dev spend time developing brand new set of skins for a particular event as well.
So Jay said, invest in skins. Tiberius, what's this going to do for collectors like you? People really like skins and want to get them all.
Oh, to be fair, I gave up collecting them because there's just too many and I don't have enough money.
I don't pay you enough.
No. Like even well, I mean, there's some skins in there that are just like the Nyx Umbriel skin, which is the one that you got the pre-order with the model of the Nyx. It's like 40 billion ISK.
Yeah.
There's no way I'm going to pay for that. So,
I'm always surprised that people, you spend ISK to buy skins on a ship that you're rarely zoomed in on. But the other day I was looking through the skin store and I actually bought 4 or 5, and I have no idea why, but they just look cool. And I was like, well, I should buy one just in case I ever zoom in.
So
I feel the same way.
It's an unspoken rule that when you're on a Titan fleet and someone's Titan doesn't have a skin, everyone makes fun of him until he buys a skin.
Truth.
how can you own like a ship that's worth that much and not buy a skin for it? I mean, seriously.
Well, yeah. So when does this change happen? It happens in March. So look out for that. And go.
It does add something to a large fleet experience when all of the other super caps, have mostly distributed themselves amongst the different skins, so they all look different and mixed, and it's a little bit more like an LA freeway where all the cars are different in a different color, and a little bit less like a rental car agency parking lot where all the cars look like duplicates of each other and they're only about 4 different colors.
There are sometimes heated discussions about which skin is better on certain hulls on fleets.
Oh yeah,
I think
that's good.
I think the skins were a very important change for EVE as a whole, mainly because you're right, it gives you a chance to personalize your ship, when beforehand, if you were in a ship, it was just the same as every other ship out there. Now you can go, hey, check me out in my swag skin and all this sort of stuff. And certainly some of the recent stuff that's come out, following on the lead from what China used to do with some of their special edition skins. They can't use the Chinese special edition skins on our server because they are horrifically bad for performance. But now CCP is using all the new toys, and they're producing some really interesting ones now, like the Dramiel skin that's about to come out with the flaming arms. What? I think it's really good for them to do it, to just add that extra connection to the game that just wasn't there before.
Let's segue just a second here to the Chinese model company that wants to take over doing models of the ships, if you can. This is a little bit of a segue, but you reminded me of that, Tiberius.
Oh, the what's it called? Kisaki Studio. There you go. It's a games model company in China. They hand make and hand paint a bunch of models, and they have been releasing a whole bunch of stuff EVE related. And you can find them on Twitter. They have a Twitter account, and literally their Twitter account is just a one-man campaign to CCP to say, hey, we've got these models. We'd like to distribute them around the rest of the world. Can we do it, please? Some of them are amazing. They have their Abaddon. It's probably maybe 10, 12 inches long, and it lights up. It has internal LEDs and everything else. And I'm sitting there scratching my head going, well, distribution might be a problem, but why hasn't this been picked up yet, especially since the Nyx thing fell over? And in fact, the Kisaki Studio even said, linked the article on the dev blog where it said that the Nyx was no longer going to be produced, and said, well, maybe we can pick up where they left off from.
These guys are totally teasing CCP, saying, come on, give us the job, we'll do it. And
they need to give them a shot. Real artist ship, so it's distribution's gotten quite a bit easier. I purchased something the other day, and it came from China, and it was here in 3 days, and it was nothing expensive. So
holy shit, they look amazing.
Yeah.
Give them a shot.
So look at Twitter, Kisaki. It's spelled there. You can see it on stream. Kisaki Studio.
I'm just going to point out that Oracle model. It's the Amar logo for its base. That is so good. But I met the guys. They came over to FanFest last year. I met the guys that run this company that makes this, and they were there talking to CCP. So hopefully something's coming out from that. But those models are amazing, and they're all hand painted as well. All hand built, hand painted. And you can have them in various colors. So the Prophecy as well, you can have it in the Sarum skins if you wanted, for example.
I want one.
That would be amazing if you could pay extra for their skins to be put on them.
Yeah, so these guys already...
Sweet.
these guys are trusted by CCP already because they do the work for Serenity Server. So yeah, anyway, but who knows? It's a licensing thing and all that, and you know how complicated that gets. All right, so I did want to cover that. I will, if I have time, rant, it doesn't look like I will, about pink skins and how the game is going more actiony and less, vibey, environmental. Anyway, can't get to that. I wanted to continue on with some of the changes that are coming through. We'll just briefly go through that, and that is there's going to be a new backend to the text channel, or the, I don't know what do you call it, chat module or whatever. That's going to be externalized. Sorry, not externalized. It's going to be, you're going to use external technology to have that, so it won't be a homemade chat channel like you have now. But you shouldn't have any functionality loss. So chat channels are going to change. Maybe some new features along with that. And they're also going to retire eVoice, which I'm actually very sad about. But it does seem to, show that the power of Discord and third-party tools is just way too strong, and always has been with Ventrilo and TeamSpeak and all those. Mumble.
I think I used eVoice once, and I got disconnected, and I couldn't reconnect again. So
that's that.
That was. And especially with like Discord, where it's a free, very powerful application.
Yep. But there's something about Eve being able to handle its core tasks. Its core tasks are people need to coordinate verbally in order to be efficient on the battlefield, and it should handle that. Like you shouldn't have to externalize that. It's critical to the game.
At the same time, though, it's one of the things that they've said that they had to retire in order to move Eve to being a 64-bit client, and that was one of the last things, along with the captain's quarters, that was preventing it. And also, about 1 in 250 people were actually using it on any sort of regular basis.
Yep.
And at that point, it's just, why have it if we need to continue to develop technology?
Yeah, I mean, this exactly, and this is why CCP have stated that they remove a lot of things, is because the more things that they plug into the client is the more things that need constant maintenance and constant updates and constant quality checks when they do something, to make sure that it just doesn't completely break. I know someone's going to probably do a meme where CCP breaks things every now and again. That's a given, but Jukebox was removed because of the technical debt that it was causing. Captain Quarters has been removed because of the technical debt it was causing, and eVoice is just another one of those as well.
Yeah, I mean, remove shit no one uses for client performance, then I'm happy.
Exactly.
But I just remain encouraged, just because as they continue to narrow their focus to the core of the game, there's hope that the game performance and the gameplay will improve.
Yeah.
And for big fights, things like local chat was something that if you closed it, it gave you better performance. And also eVoice and sound is something you turned off to get better performance on your client. So to get it out of the standard servers and those kind of things, and there, I think that's better for fights and bigger things. So I'm glad they're doing it.
Okay, so the next changes are the last that we'll talk about, and those are the balance changes that are coming. I'll read through them really quickly, and then we can discuss them. And that is for Tech 1 battleships. They're going to be have a little more cargo, and they're going to have a little stronger lock range. Attack battle cruisers are going to be able to fit the micro jump drive module, which allows them to jump or blink, as they call it. There are going to be some specific ship changes. The Orthrus is going to be slower, easier to hit, and a little less fitting power on the power grid. Ferox is going to be a little less fitting. The Matterall is getting a nerf. It's going to have less range. It's going to be easier to hit, and they're swapping out a low for a mid module. And that basically means that the low modules are used for damage and tank and that sort of stuff, and the mid modules are used sometimes for utility, but also shield. And again, Minmatar ships that you can use as armor tanked or shield tanked, and so a lot of versatility with that racial group of ships. And that's the tradition of the Matterall as part of that Minmatar alignment with, I think, Galenti.
Swiss Army Matterall.
Right. So you have the Drake Navy issue, and that's going to have one less launcher but do more DPS per. Cyclone is getting more DPS. These are buffs here, and so the Cyclone is getting more DPS. The Eagle is getting faster, and it's going to have more drones. And the Munin is going to get more DPS, be faster and harder to hit. It's also going to switch one high
loses its utility high slot.
It loses, utility in the high slots, and it gains a mid, so maybe a little more E-War or something. Okay, and then they introduced the Monitor ship, which is basically going to be a ship that has 90% resistances. It will be able to use probes, and have a target painter that's really just to get on kill mails. Let's just be clear about that. So that ship is meant for FCs that don't want to worry so much about getting knocked off the field, so they can continue to give orders on the field, which allows the battle to go on, and this ship insulates them from getting really alpha'd off it. Okay,
I hate this ship.
Any of those ships, do we want to talk about any of those ships? If you do, let's do it.
Just two quick points, and then I'll step back. But Union, don't tell Elo Knight, and I hate the flag cruiser.
Okay, Elo Knight is back. Apparently, he's going to be FCing, or he's back in the game. He just appeared on Open Comms the other night, so we'll see what's up with him. What do you guys think of the ships?
Just kind of briefly going down the list, one of the things that of note is that they're increasing the base lock range on Tech 1 battleships, and they're also increasing the cargo capacity. Part of that dates back to kind of a complaint that Mr. Hyde, a former CSM, had, where people who were wanting to use the micro jump drive in solo and kind of small scale things didn't actually have the targeting range to lock. So when you jumped onto someone, you would have to relock them, and in a battleship that takes a lot of time. So this way you can jump on top of someone and scram them in kind of a solo application. One of the other points where this really factors into like a larger fleet fight is now things like Ravens that are being fit for cruises with projection in the mids via ballistic control computers, and the targeting mids, the sensor boosters. They're going to be able to, already lock out to more or less max range and just be jumped around, and that is a further buff to that.
Jumpy Ravens.
Essentially gives ships that fight at longer ranges you don't really have to fit a sensor booster now with them.
Oh, that's good. The Matterall seems to be taking a pretty big hit. At least you can tell by their market price taking a dive. But something that Fozzie's known for saying, that is people underestimate Minotaur ships. I think because you can get more creative with them.
It's still going to be pretty strong, I think, as an armor tanked battleship.
Maybe it's just a knee-jerk reaction to start selling those things off at cheaper prices, but they'll probably start buying them up again, so look for that. Cyclone, haven't heard much of that. And the Ferox, I think, was very popular for a while, at least as a cheap ship that you could get a fleet into that could be effective.
Currently, battlecruiser meta is overwhelmed by the Ferox just because it just does a ridiculous amount of sustained DPS when you get enough of them in. So that's an obvious choice for them. In before, can I bring my Ferox memes maybe? Because they came the replacement for the Drake essentially. So yeah, I think that's a sensible thing. The Cyclone definitely needed more damage because that thing just never gets used.
The Ferox used to suck. I think PvPers used to use them to attract people as bait, because this ship is only flown to be killed. So if you fly it, people will attack you. And they used to bait people into Ferox fights because it just used to be bad. Then all ships go through their sunshine days, as well as when they get put on the shelf and nobody uses them anymore.
For instance, for a creative FC to use it once and get a good fight out of it, for people to start looking at it again.
Right, and people examine what you did there, and they start saying, "Can we replicate that?" I've noticed that the Drake has been one of those ships that was like, it was just a PvE boat back in 2009, and then because it could withstand, it had so many slots for shields, it could just withstand all kinds of NPC damage that was predictable, but you never used it to PvP. And then when the Titan lost its ability to wipe them off the grid with its Doomsday device that was an area of damage, all of a sudden the Drake started to come back as a viable ship to use again. And it lasted for a long time. And then that's where that meme came, "Can I bring my Drake?" Because everybody could afford a Drake kind of thing, and instead of a battleship or whatever. So anyway, it's interesting to see these ships kind of come and go. It's been going on a long, long time. So
the Ferox is
this
still going to
monitor
be
ship,
a mainstay. I
think so?
mean, it's still really incredibly powerful. What this change basically does is the CPU change is more or less meaningless. The power grid is the one that actually kind of matters. If you want to still fly the ship as is, you have to drop one of your meg stabs and put on a power diagnostics, and the thing still fits just as it was before. So it's still going to be in a place where it's very highly competitive for the projection you get and the battlecruiser range. That was given when they increased all the battlecruisers combined with a 10% optimal bonus per level. It just hits out so far that it's going to continue to be the mainstay of that ship class.
Plus, any T1 ship is something you can just produce with minerals and a blueprint. So those can be mass produced without having to depend on market. But when you get into faction ships, those require a blueprint you have to hunt for, and therefore that market can be squeezed by an opponent, let's say. Same with the Navy factions. If I'm not mistaken, those rely on not only minerals, but your faction points that you have to sell off. T1 ships are probably going to be the core of a lot of fleets for a while, and maybe the specialized ships like the Matterall start to go away as and T2 actually has gotten very expensive since the moon mining has changed. You guys have noticed that, right?
That's why hacks won't be effective in large-scale gangs, because battlecruisers are simply cheaper and do everything they can do pretty much.
Right. I looked at that and saw T2 must go up because moon minerals are going to be harder to mine, and bought up a bunch of jump freighters at about 7 billion per jump freighter. They are now worth 13 billion, and that was only a few months ago. So because they take so many T2 moon minerals and stuff, how could they not go up in price? So that was just a logical conclusion. But look at all T2 items across the board. Look at all T2 ships.
Sabers are 100 mil right now.
What is?
A Saber.
Oh, Saber's 100 mil.
Saber's 100 mil. Wow.
What were they usually?
I paid 55 for them a couple months ago.
Wow.
We knew it was going to ripple in. I think this show had been warning people. T2 is going to go up. It's going to ripple in. Get your hands on either moon minerals and control your own production line, or buy up, stocks now, because those are going to go up, and it's just naturally happening.
I know. Our producer Kunmi, he builds a lot of T2 ships, and he built a couple hundred Munins and Zealots, and they sold instantly in Jita for like 400 mil each.
Oh, nice!
Wow.
Okay, this monitor ship, FC's in here. What do you guys think of that?
It isn't a good ship.
It isn't a good ship, says Jay, right?
I've been trying to look for a use case for any of these ships. I mean, or specifically the Mawderator. I mean, I've tried to go over like any major balance change that will actually affect me and try to test it on CC to see how to apply or change. The Mawderator, I'm trying to find a use case for it. I mean, for armor, there's still the Damnation or the Legion, depending on what you're doing. So there's no reason to use it there. For shield, there's just simply better options. I think maybe the only thing I've possibly come up with is in a Serb fleet with maybe like low-grade snakes, and that's about it.
One thing I would like to change to it is a lot of he has his ESP is split between shield and armor. So if you do an armor fleet, only half the ESP is in armor to rep you. So one thing they might want to do with it to get it used is to make it like a Tech 3 destroyer. And before you undock, you select if you want to be it a shield monitor or an armor monitor, or even for the special snowflakes and hull monitor and structure monitor, and then you might get some more use out of it, but I don't see it getting used that much.
I think it will be used a lot in mid-sized gangs, but not in large fights. Yeah, I think in mid-sized gangs like 100 versus 100, just because the FC doesn't want to, specifically newer FCs don't want the fear of being headshot, I think.
Plus, you probably have weaker logistics in that situation. So
right, but in those kind of situations, Jay, what would you fly the Mawderator instead of, though?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. So in those medium-sized gangs, as an FC, you would normally fly like a vulture with links, or like an absolution with links, or something like that. So you're taking away from the fleet, where in a fleet where every member has a role and has is useful. You're essentially flying a useless ship just so you can be on field.
And that's the thing I just don't get about it at all. Like, so every single ship in the EVE ecosphere at the moment has some form of purpose. It has a niche to fill. It has sort of an idea. Those purposes may be, yes, useful than others, fine. But, you can look at a ship and go, this is its defined role. And the Monitor just comes out of the blue. It just is a ship that's there that's saying that, oh, FCs can use this. But I'm looking at it, I'm going, but there are other ships that can do the job just as well and perform functions that FCs want. It can give, you can use command ships and gives boosts. Why are CCP not just expanding the range of command ships?
This was requested, though. I mean, the CCP didn't dream this up. It was heavily requested.
By whom?
I can't remember who said it, but a lot of people have said that, like, the streamers want it, like the people that run public fleets and stream it. Those are the people that will use it the most.
Well, and that's a good example, because they don't have a second person that can step up and take over the fleet or reliable logistics. When those guys get headshotted, the whole evening's over for them, unless they're flying an alt as well, and then they can secretly, FC with that. There must be other situations that people need this ship for, and maybe it's not for nullsec and big fights, and maybe it's not even for roams, but there must be other situations, or why else would they have invented it? I mean, CCP doesn't sit there and say, let's just make an answer for something that doesn't have a question. Anyway, so
FC's has been asking for a ship like this for a while, but the way they've implemented it and how badly it's gone, we'd rather have nothing.
Why haven't they just not taken the command range of ships, introduced? I think T3 cruisers can do a command ship still. Why have they not done that and tweak those to make them more functionally useful?
Well, the only thing I can think of is this is, and this was announced, this is the first of its type. There will be other types. It's maybe considered a flagship. So maybe its purpose is to become some capture the flag mechanism. That's a total fiction there, but just I'm brainstorming that it could have a purpose in the future that doesn't have yet, because the mechanics for it aren't there yet. Maybe it links into intosising or something like that. I don't know. But maybe they're going to evolve it into something else, which is surprising, because they say, this is our first step into this arena.
Can't wait for the unkillable flag titan.
Yeah. I don't know. It could change gameplay in a way that is beneficial. Who knows how it gets used. But we're running out of time here. And is there anything else we want to talk about those ships? Mawderator, you're going to write another article about these balance changes too, right?
Yeah, kind of a more or less a summary of what's going on and how I think it'll actually get applied to EVE. Munin, it's still a ship that's got 4 mids, probably not going to get used. It's going to have a rebalance with hacks. Eagle, still not going to be great. The Tengu still exists and does its role better. Cyclone's still going to be a solo PvPer ship. Drake Navy finally gets to fit a command link. Macarial fit another tracking computer to to compensate for the loss of fall off. The Orthrus is finally getting nerfed, which has been long overdue. There's some ridiculous fits that you used to be able to do that no longer work because you just don't have the power grid anymore.
Good.
And so if people want more information on your observations, where can they find that?
So I'm going to be putting up a blog post on my site that's a WordPress blog called In Moderation, and those will be coming out the first one is going to be out in the next couple of days. The next one after that might be about a week.
So you're in stuff now more, don't you? So you can get stuff put on Tide then if you wanted.
It's a consideration.
There you go. I'm doing your recruitment pitch for you, Matt.
Wow. Okay, so thanks for going through the ships with us. That wraps up the balance changes. They're coming in March, so look for these to actually happen sometime in March, probably the middle, and then we shall see. Probably don't have enough time. We're a little bit over now about this rant that I was going to go on about missing CCP Torfy's vision of EVE Online, which is what he used to deliver a lot of since he was the creative director and overall artistic mind behind the way it looked and felt and how it creeped up on you and that sort of stuff. And maybe we'll just do a show on it and maybe have more time to talk about it and stuff like that. But I will point to one example, and if you look at Link's channel inside of the TIS Discord, and I'll put a link for these people in there and also in the show notes, if you can get there, you can see that there's the video of the latest trailer that CCP did for, I think it was FanFest, where they showed Capsuleer being born into his ship and then how he ventures through the universe. And there was a neat little behind the scenes for how that was made. And CCP Ghost had a presentation about new players, and so he was able to show how that video, was done, and he showed the rough draft. The thing was, the rough draft was great. The rough draft worked, and I was trying to figure out why I like the rough draft better than the actual final piece. And I was, after looking at it for a while, I thought, well, this feels a lot more science fiction-y. There's a lot more of the beginning where they're putting together the Capsuleer, and then they merge them to the ship, and there's a lot less of the ship, being merged. And then when they venture through the galaxy, it just seems like every place is remote and foreign and different. And then when they did the final, it seemed like a lot more was unified. Things looked the same. It just had different colors. And so I think, but it was more visceral. So I think what happened is that without Torfy, that the more of the RPG element or the pen and paper, the imagination game has been sacrificed for the visual, visceral game, which is where video games are these days with PUBG and with, what do you call it? LOL and those kinds of games. I feel like, on one level, EVE is a game. It's an arcade game, basically. It's becoming more of an arcade game and less of a mindfuck game where the world is twisted and things are dark and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of lament that. So that's what that rant was. I think Torfy kind of, when he used to name modules, they weren't named Ample this. They weren't called Dick that. There wasn't any of this, what I consider the community stupidity seeping into the game. So you could stay with your immersive. If you wanted to be immersed in this universe, you could stay with that without feeling the ridiculous nature of some of the players. But they're letting that in quite a bit now, or at least it kind of feels that way. It's always been a funny place. It's always had character. But I do feel like with pink skins, with seasonal elements and stuff like that some players latch on to, it really kind of drives some players to realize it's just a game. There's my Mickey Rooney moment or whatever it is. Who disagrees with me?
I want my fire skins, though.
Okay.
I disagree in the skins because I like multicolored skins, but that trailer, when I saw, I was looking through the show notes and I saw the link to the trailer that they just showed on the stream, and I was like, oh my god, this thing is amazing. This is so good. It was really dark and gritty, and I just thought that was a great trailer, and in comparison to it, so I agree with you on that.
Oh, you're talking about the rough draft. Yeah, it was really gritty.
Everyone used to get real hyped up for the trailers, and now it's just sort of like, another trailer. Cool.
Exactly.
That's the other rant, is that so much is leaking out these days that Tiberius and I talked about this. I don't know if they do it on purpose to keep players interested, to give them a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and keep everybody kind of engaged. But I feel like they are blowing all their surprises by letting players data mine all the stuff that's coming out.
The best trailer we had recently was the Citadels one, for when Citadels was first introduced. That was pretty good.
What now, when we see something, it's like, yeah, that's old news. I saw that like 2 months ago, 3 months ago.
If you look on the CCP or EVE Online YouTube channel and you look at the most viewed videos, it is definitely skewed very, very heavily toward the top viewed videos being the trailers from 5+ years ago, where you've got they're just more thematically much more dark and heavy. So I can see that being appealing. There's a lot of kind of mystery or war elements going on there that were excellently directed and voice acted.
Yeah. Like the Prophecy trailer, which was my last favorite one, of seeing all the ships coming in and, the now lost vision of Valkyrie and Dust and all this sort of stuff going on as well. That got me pumped and hyped for whatever was going to happen. Citadel did as well, but not as much to that extent. And I think in the last year or so, no, not at all.
Well, and that's why I wind this all back to Torfy, because he was the guy that kind of got us pumped up about these things, like his vision about what the universe was like, even his twisted sense of humor and that kind of stuff. So for me, we may have crossed that Rubicon a long time ago. Okay. If you want to see those videos, we'll post them in the links inside of TIS Discord. We'll also put them in the show notes here. We have a new website, thanks to Kaskora. And that is talkinginstations.com. You can find this show and back issues for the last 2 years on that website. And we are busily trying to figure out all the little features that might make it more helpful for you guys to get more Talking in Stations. All right, so in coming weeks, on March 11th, we're going to meet with Wind Spirits, who is the CEO of Fraternity. He also started Pango Coalition. Very interesting, the rise of the Chinese bloc. That's what we'll cover there. The week after that, on the 18th, we will have CCP Team Tech and talk about ESO. Basically, your API, when you give it to somebody, what does that mean they can do? So look out for that one. That's on the 18th. And April 1st, we will talk with Ghost Legion and talk about what the future of those citadels are that were put up by NETC. And now let's go to meetups. Tiberius, what do you got?
So of course, this time of year is Australian prime time, so there's plenty of meets in Australia going on. On the 9th of March, there is a meet in Adelaide, Australia, at the Belgian Beer Cafe. That's from 6 p.m. Go check that one out. Toronto in Canada, they are meeting up again for their monthly meet. That's the Jack Astor on John in Toronto. Go check that one out. We got the G-Fleet Düsseldorf. I'm not going to pronounce that. It's in German. I'm going to fail. At Bar 95 in Düsseldorf. Go have a look at that one. And then there seems to be a couple of meets now, of course, now that we're getting into FanFest season in the next month. There are a whole bunch of meetups being planned up for FanFest. So there's one already in there. It looks like at the Bruggen Brew House, which is a great bar in the basement of CCP's place. The beer is outrageously expensive, but it is a good place to go to. Looks like some German meetup that is going on there. We got Detroit on the 20th of April at the Imperial. That's EVE Detroit 2018, 20th of April. And last, I think that is everything we've got for the next month or so. So go check those out. And of course, keep an eye on evemeet.net for stuff that's happening during FanFest as well, because there'll be a lot of breakout meets that go on outside of the event as well.
One more for us. EVE San Diego, California is having our monthly meetup on Thursday, March 15th at Kaminsky's Barbecue in Poway, as we always do.
There you go.
Right. Thanks to our producer, McLeod, for putting the show together for us and showing us all the neat images as we go through this. Thanks very much for our guests today. Apple Pear, thank you. Duncan Maclain, thank you very much. Jay Amazingness, always nice to have you on. And Mawderator, thanks for coming on. We'll look forward to reading your articles.
I think this was my first TIS. So I've my cherry. So
yeah, I talk to you all the time. I talk to you on different things, so it seems like I don't talk to you all the time. I talk to you on different things, so it seems like you've been on before. But it's good. We'll have you on again. And
also, thank you to Slayer X for subscribing. For Skeptic Nerd Guy for subscribing 37 months in a row.
37 months.
37. Thank you to Ridicus, who also subscribed.
Awesome. And again, thanks to supporters through the Patreon. You can find that on talkinginstations.com as well. join our Discord, again, talkingstations.com. And I think that's all we have this week. So
thank you to Kaskora, our webmaster, and to McLeod, our producer.
Absolutely. And the last thing I want to say is that up next in just a minute is on INN is a review of Deep Rock Galactic, which will be done by RS Lifeshifter and Drunk Canadian. So they'll be up next in just a second. Stick around and stay tuned to watch them. But for us here at Talking in Stations, that's all we got this week. We will see you next week on Talking in Stations.
Bye.